There we go.
Cool.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a live for us anyway, episode of Wheel Tapping. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you in my city.
I know. One of these days, I'll have to get you to my city. I don't know.
Maybe.
Philadelphia's a little less appealing than Denver is to me, I have to say. But I flew out to spend some time. Long story short, I was going to be here for narrow gauge, misbooked my tickets, and decided to just crash at the house for a week.
Doesn't matter if you were here in July or August as long as you got here. So
Exactly. So we thought we'd record a show while we're here, hanging out and having some fun. And you introduced me to something that's I would argue in 18XX parlance is the hotness, as it were.
yeah, I think to some degree.
Yeah,
I believe that.
It's definitely new. It's definitely hot, and of course, in true 18XX fashion of old, hard to come by. But we'll we'll talk about that at the end.
We're all used to that.
I know, right? So what we're talking about is 18Korea. This is. It's been seeing a lot of play. Bankruptcy Club's had a few plays of it. It's definitely been making the rounds, and we're no exception here. It's a very interesting game, and it's actually made by a small company actually out of South Korea.
I think so, yeah.
Art and Peace Games. So it's brand new. Appears to be for their first, delve into it, just based on some cursory research, which is. It's kind of amazing because I think what they managed to do is, I think it's pretty polished. Definitely the presentation and everything is really well done. So we talked about that. It's current, so it was made in 2022 by K. Jack and Rach Seo. It plays 2 to 5. What player counts have you played?
I've actually played it 2,
Okay.
3, and 4.
Okay, and I've played it with the 3.
I'm jonesing for a 5.
I imagine this would be very much the knife fight in the phone booth with 5. So I got 1 play in, so we got the cursory play this week, and you've got it played a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I got 7, and the first time we played the game was at Trax Narrow Gauge last month, and it got played 3 times in one day. So, and then my other 4 plays are single plays.
Since then, yeah. But I mean, you're at a convention. You have a lot of games available. Well, a little get together. Yeah. You have a lot of games available, and you just hammer on this one 3 times. And I think that's literally why we are sitting here talking about it now.
For sure,
because it's got some really fun hooks. Yeah. For sure,
it really does.
Great. So let's hop into what we're going to start calling the game environment.
Yes.
Because as we start to dive into games, we've kind of struggled with what to call it in the past. You didn't like comparing it to 1830. I kind of feel we need to have a baseline, but then so many games don't fit that mold.
Yeah.
And this is most certainly one of them. So I really like we're just going to kind of talk about like what kind of makes this game unique in this space.
What's the sandbox?
Yeah, exactly. I like that. I like that. And where's the cat? So the capitalization, it's incremental, 20% float, so you can get companies up and running pretty quick.
But you have to auction the presidency.
Yes, and that's kind of, and it's not a auction where the money goes into the company. Nope, it's just a flat out fee.
0's a good bid. 5, 10, 15, whatever. Pay that fee and then float the company.
And what kind of, I think, even makes that a little more interesting is that the companies themselves are variable in the game. So they can be spread out throughout the map, and it could be, there will be XYZ companies in the game, but some might be out of the game.
Yeah, there's 24 companies, 12 South Korean and 12 North Korean.
Right.
There's always going to be 5 North Koreans in the game, randomly determined, of course. And then there's going to be either 6 or 8 South Korean companies, depending, 8 if there's 5 players, Right. 6 if there's everything else.
Variable.
With 3 of those companies being available at the start of the game, And the other 3 of those companies, or 4 of those companies, depending on, half of the South Korean companies will be available at the start of the game. The other half will be available like mid-game.
That might be important.
The mid-game part.
That mid-game part,
Yeah,
we will most certainly be talking about that. You can still only own 60%, and you kind of have a couple things that you really enjoy about this.
Well, one thing on the 60% is you can exceed 60% if you buy shares from the open market. So
Right.
I can buy from the company treasury up to 60%, but if I want 70, 80, 90, 100, I've got to count on one of you guys buying and then eventually selling those shares so that I can get them.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense.
But yeah, there's 2, I think, really cool rules that apply to the environment of the game. One is the phase changes. Typical 18XX game, right? Someone buys the first 3 train. Okay, green tiles are available. Someone buys the first 4 train. The 2s rust, okay? I mentioned those 2 because one of them is different. In this game, the phase will change when the next train is available. So in 18Korea, after the first operating round, all the 2 trains are exported. So like in the first OR, unlimited 2 trains, like 1817, then they go away.
Right.
Which means for the second OR, the 3 trains are now available. Green is now available. So green tiles are now available. So the phase changes happen when the train of the next phase is first available. You don't have to wait for somebody to purchase it. But the rusting still happens on a purchase. Just
Right.
because a 4 train's available doesn't mean my 2s have rusted.
Right.
Someone's actually got to buy a 4 train to rust my 2s.
Yeah, and it really makes a lot of sense. The way that the companies all handle that, and the way that it's kind of like almost like a soft rust in the way it kind of plays out, because you see the imminence of the next phase coming, but you don't have to. You can get the benefit of the green without having to buy a
To be the
train.
person that bought it, right?
Right, exactly.
Buying that first green train, that first 3 train, okay, you're welcome, everybody else. In this case, now even I would have access to.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The other thing that I really like is the selling of a train, the buying of a train from another company has a special rule on it. And that rule is I cannot purchase that train from that company unless I can drive that train to this company on a legal route, which has a very important reason for that rule to be into the game.
Right.
But I really think it's cool.
I
don't know of any other game.
Yeah, and I think we, definitely we have that rule when it comes to like mergers and things, sure. But we've never talked about it like you need to be able to drive this train to that person for them to be able to have it.
Exactly.
Which kind of blows my mind because it sounds like thematically that makes so much more sense. Like now that I actually see it in print, and I'm like, well, I like that. That works. It works absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely cool. The 2 more huge things I think that differentiate this game is, while we're kind of talking about the trains and everything, is the map as Korea is north and south, and it's divided, right across the parallel. And you start the game with North companies and South companies, and then we actually show the Korean War with eliminating every North Korean company that doesn't have a token in the South.
Saved by shenanigans, of course.
Yeah, shenanigans, and the next thing we'll talk about here too. There are ways to mitigate that, but there's one, and it just may not even happen. But ultimately, unless you have a token down south, everything's gone. All the track, all the stations, everything that's in the north is pretty much wiped off the map.
So there's four trains, and when the third one is purchased, there's a Korean War card shoved between the third and the fourth.
And it's not randomized. It's always going to be
there. That means at the end of this OR, the Korean War is going to occur, right? So everyone gets a chance to finish their operations in this round before the Korean War happens. And so what happens in the Korean War is all the tile from the north is just swept off the game. Any tokens are just put back in the box, right? Those North Korean companies are then immediately closed with no compensation. Everything they own goes back to the box. Unless a North Korean company has secured a token in the South. So if it's got a South Korean token, then the North Korean company doesn't close.
Correct.
Right? So you can stay around.
And it doesn't lose anything. It doesn't lose assets. I mean, just any tokens on the board.
Any tokens
that are in the North. Yep.
And then in the South, all the cities get wiped out. So all the plane track tiles and the town tiles, all those stay there. But the cities come right out from under your tokens, and your tokens just drop into the hexagon. And then when you have to rebuild the cities, and your tokens come back. One thing I think is kind of cool, just being a history nut, is Busan is green, so Busan doesn't get busted down.
Right.
Which is cool because that was the pocket in which the United Nations forces were pushed back into initially during the Korean War. So I think that's really kind of cool that this one city stays.
They paid attention to it for sure. And then the other cool thing is that you can see. Oh, I opened the wrong side. On the map, like this cuts across the whole map, and it's the DMZ. So you can pretty much see exactly where that's going to just clobber the top, and there's some decent revenue up top. So
yeah, I think
you can make some good revenue up front. There's some 40s up there that go to 50 in green. So the allure to go to the North is strong. Whether even you don't get a token down south, that's just another company whose train you now don't have to worry about.
The other cool environmental thing is the asset cards that are in the game, and we'll talk about them a little more specifically. But there's A, B, and C asset cards that come with the game, and each player is gonna draft 1A, 1B, and 1C from a selection of cards that gets randomly determined because there are as many as 75 of these cards, right? So.
Right.
And each one has a special ability. So in a sense, they're kind of like the privates. They give you a special ability, but they're not like privates in terms of they pay revenue or you sell them to a company. You just assign them to companies at the appropriate times. And most of them are real broken. They're game breakers, right? But
very much so.
But if I have a broken thing, so do you. so does he. So does she.
Yeah,
so everybody's got big weapons.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that because I would argue that it is the shenanigan of the game.
Yeah,
these things really add a really cool, fun mix. If anybody's familiar with the game Marco Polo, when it came out originally, it was famous for, we're going to give everybody player powers. But everybody's player power was so overpowered and OP that it was like ridiculous. You can break one of the major rules of the game, and these kind of behave like that.
Yeah.
For the
most part.
And you're not choosing from this entire stack of cards. You're choosing from a limited number. So you can kind of pare that down if you want to make a very fun, crazy game and draft from that pile, or something that's a little more, I'd rather have my tea and crumpets kind of day versus I'm going to start my day with a Red Bull and a shot of vodka in it.
In order to heighten the shenanigans, and we'll talk about in the shenanigan phase, some certain cards and stuff. But according to the rules, if it's a 4-player game, there's 4 A's, 4 B's, and 4 C's available. We always do +1 because
there's always one that somebody doesn't have to have, or to make a harder decision point.
I want you to at least have 2.
You don't want to get stuck with something.
Yeah.
No, it's a really smart rule when it comes to drafting.
The game comes with 30, so there's 10 A's, 10 B's, and 10 C's. But they also have an expansion for the game which has 15 more of each. So you could have 30 or 75 of these crazy things. And the expansion, get it, has some of the really super cool, crazy ones in it, so.
Yeah, so there you go. That's the environment we're playing in. It's a lot of fun. Other than that, it's pretty much a normal 18XX. We have dits, we have cities, we have towns, we have mountains. Everything else kind of feels very, very similar. You're not having to learn crazy things. But I will tell you, just that phase change when you first play this game can really, I don't want to say catch you out, but it can. We're used to it being a certain way, and this is a very different way. So it's
you buy that brown train and someone says, "Oh, good," or you don't buy the brown train. Sorry, you buy that last 4 train and someone just says, "Oh, brown tiles are available," and you're like, "What?"
Yeah, it's like
brown tiles.
It's Christmas.
It's Christmas. Thank you for buying that poison 4 train. So.
Excellent. So with the sip of coffee and a choo-choo, we're going to get on to the yellow phase. And the yellow phase is where we talk about the map and the stock market. So we've kind of already touched on the map a little bit.
Yeah. A lot of mountains. About the only other thing to say, right?
Right. And,
I take that back. There's one other thing to say.
There's one other thing to say. Well, I forget how big it is.
It's an 8-fold board. So it is. It's kind of gigante. But, and then there's more, a little bit more down here. But like the other thing about the map is, until the Korean War, you're playing on something, this big, right? The map is what, 2 feet long, right?
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah, and then after the Korean War, you're playing in a 1 foot by 1 foot box of hexagons, right? So it gets, it goes from wide open to really tight, and as a result, especially with the North Korean companies trying to get a token in. There's some tight token opportunities, like laying,
for sure,
bad ones. They're not disastrous, right? There's other options for you, but your primary options are gone.
And the other really interesting thing that kind of comes into play is when you downgrade all your cities. It's not as bad as you think it's going to be. Having to rebuild, I don't know about you, but the first time they told me that, I'm like, what? So that means I have to spend the whole second half of the game rebuilding my network. It really doesn't work out to be that bad.
And they're only green when they go down.
Right. It tends to move along pretty quick. The game itself has, 2 ORs every time. So you're able to kind of pace through it pretty quick. But the fun thing is when you have tokens and you start to lay the cities and then upgrade it, the person who's doing the upgrade gets to determine whose tokens go in the holes, which I found very cool. Doesn't mean the other person can't use it. Yeah. They're there, but it's not a start-stop station. It doesn't meet the requirements for a route.
Yeah, they call them external stations.
Right, but it allows them to still access and run through that city, which I kind of found was a very clever way to kind of deal with.
For sure.
Hey, all of a sudden, these 3 tokens here, they have nothing underneath them, and then you can kind of lock it in.
Another way that plays into the cleverness is all of the companies have a starting location determined, but it's not a reserve space. So if you want to put a token there, go ahead and put a token there. If somebody starts that company, then it just jams its way in there, right? It's an external token. Of course, when it upgrades, it'll snap in, all that kind of stuff. And you made me remind myself when you're talking about, wait, I have to rebuild all these cities? Well, you get 3 track points.
Right.
And a yellow tile's 1. So you could lay 3 yellows.
Right.
An upgrade is 2. So what? You can do 1 upgrade, 1 yellow, or 3 yellows.
And they could be on the same tile. So you could do a yellow city.
No, that was a special power you had. That's one of the. Normally you can't lay a yellow and then spend the other 2 track points to upgrade it. But
I forget when I have special.
Chris had an OP.
Yeah. Big surprise.
Big surprise.
Big surprise.
Yeah, we'll talk about those guys. I think my only graphical bummer about this game is on the stock market here, you can see the par values that are available at the beginning of the game are brown, and then the par values that are available later in the game after the Korean War are yellow. Well, brown and yellow kind of mean something in an 18-hour game.
Even if it's a red-brown like this russet color could potentially be called, right?
It's classic brown. It's russet, yeah. But other than that, everything they've done on the map, the cards and everything, beautiful. I mean, really great job.
I have to say, the logos could be a little hard to read at distance, but I still like that they're pretty actually. They mean something. They're kind of awesome. They're not just And
I love the Korean on the map. I can't read it obviously, but I just think it looks fantastic.
Yeah, and then they also put in the English names, which is great. But
Yeah.
didn't put it other places, which is a choice. But
So the North is very rich compared to the
all
South.
these end cities.
They're end cities. The offboards are richer, and they're doing that on purpose.
Yeah, to entice you to want to build up
Yeah,
here.
you can make a lot of money in the North, so you're going to want to start those North Korean companies, and then the game wants to give you the challenge of, can you get that thing south before it goes poof and you've lost your investment, right? And so you might have to time, do I want to sell down before, like, okay, the Korean War is going to happen, I better just sell down because I'm not going to be able to save this company, which leads us to the stock market thing here again, where the only way prices change on the stock market is if the president or director sells, then it goes down 1 per share. So when I try to bail out of that North Korean company,
It's
to
gonna
the extent
cost.
that I can, it's
I mean,
gonna
you
hurt.
still get the full value that you were
Yes.
at when you sell. It just drops. So
You,
it's not fully brutal, but it's
no.
not great either.
In an OR, you move up if you pay your value. You can double jump.
Yeah.
You don't move up if a company's 100% in player hands. Just stays there. So, and of course, there's rule breakers for all those things.
And the end cities pretty much are $10 to $20 more. $10 more.
$10 more. Yeah.
So like, a green end's $50.
Yeah.
So you're running pretty early in the game.
Yeah.
You can make some pretty good money pretty quick.
100%.
So, definitely, a lot of people, I think when they hear about this, are like, I'll just build in the South and not have to deal with that. And, that's fair. You can try that. But I think you're going to be so far behind in the cash game that somebody who just ran everything and then right before permanents pop, they don't have to worry about a permanent. This company's going to go away. It doesn't go anywhere. It just poof, it's gone. My liability's out. Sell down my shares before it happens, and just kind of.
Well, this is where
from
the rule of I can only buy a train from a company if I can drive that train across the legal route to the purchasing company. This is where that rule makes a lot of sense, because otherwise I could just start a North Korean company, make a lot of money, buy a bunch of trains, and just sell them to my South Korean guys. No, I got to drive the train there. So unless I can save that company, or maybe I just make a connection and I don't care about saving the company, right? Like before I can really take full advantage of that North Korean company's potential earnings to buy trains and send them to my other company, no, I got to work for that. It's not free.
It's such a great problem solve.
Yeah.
Right? Like that. And who'd have thought? Like, it makes so much thematic sense. I'm like, and you know what? I don't want to say I've never seen it before. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist in somebody's
True,
game
I've
somewhere.
never seen it either. Though.
Exactly.
And I've played a lot.
And I think it's really clever, especially when you have a map that is literally trying to be a divided map. Yeah, exactly.
One half of the map falls off.
I kind of viewed like the Korean War is going to happen like 82 does with the rebellion, and not at all. No, it does not behave like that. It is its own beast. That wiping everything off the board, it can be great because it can totally get rid of a liability that you were just about to have, and you don't. So it's very interesting. I think there are a lot of moments of decision that you can kind of have with fun.
Yeah.
Borderline shenanigan-y, but
Well, no, there's some shenanigans. We'll talk about those. The North Korean companies are shenanigan opportunities.
Absolutely.
For me.
But before we talk about that,
Yes.
we have to take and stop at the station of Green and talk about the trains themselves.
Sounds good.
I don't have a ton to offer on the trains.
Yeah, sure.
We kind of covered a lot, when you said like two trains
The two
kind of behave
trains.
like 17,
Right.
Where they just kind of, or the L's in 22, where they just kind of like, once we're done, poof, they're out. And then they're gone. So
Yeah, I think the only two things I would add to that are it's got express trains, 5E, 6E, and 8E, and they work just like 18 New England, Scott Peterson's 18 New England, right? So if I have a 5E, it's a 5E. If I have two 5Es, it's a double 5E. If I have a
Not
5e
length.
and a 6e, there's still a double 5e, but I
Right.
pay, that kind of stuff. So it, which I don't know, I think is
And
a cool
it's
mechanic.
not a root lengthener; it's a doubler of
Right.
value.
Right.
So it's
So
not like it's a 10e.
I'll still run 5 and double. And I think that's an important mechanic because we go from a map this big to a map this big.
Yeah.
After the Korean War. So, you might not be
You
able
can't
to run.
avoid. You can't avoid running over your own track.
Right.
And even then, you're still picking up junk cities that you didn't really want.
Yeah.
And you can't skip cities either.
No, but you can skip doinks, but it's sometimes, you know what? I got to run the doink because I don't have enough cities because of your token. Thank you.
And some of the doinks can actually be worth money, so you might not, for very shenanigan-y reasons.
And like I'm trying to process my feelings about the train rush in this game because there certainly is a train rush, but it's not like an oppressive one. But like I feel like we rip through the trains really quick, and it does cause problems for players. But I've only seen one player on the verge of bankruptcy. It was me, by the way.
Surprising absolutely no one who's
pulling
fans of
levers
the
out
show.
there. Right, so like I don't feel like there's a real big bankruptcy danger,
Right.
but it can definitely impact your score.
Yeah, I think the fact that if you're doing things right, there's enough money floating around early enough that you can mitigate all the liabilities you may be staring down pretty comfortably.
And there's some cards that
Yeah.
can help save your bacon too.
So that's it on trains. I don't think, I think the interesting thing is when you're buying trains is to kind of just be aware that, unless again, there's a shenanigan lever card that allows you're kind of getting the lowest of the two values. Yes. So, if you're running an 8 and a 5, nope, you're just running a 5 twice.
Yes.
So it kind of gets a little interesting in that regard where it caused me a couple moments of, well, why am I going to try and get a better train in this company? It doesn't matter. It has 2 5s. It's never going to run better than 2 5s with the setup I have.
At that point, yeah, I see what you're saying. Because after the 6 train, your train limit's 2 anyway.
Right. So even if I bought one out and dumped one in.
When those first browns are available, you can have 3 trains in there, 2 5Es and a 4 train. You can make a pile of money.
Absolutely. So it kind of caused, it's weird what it kind of does at the end, because I don't want to say it slows down the rush a little bit, but it definitely isn't that I have a 5 train, I really want to get that diesel, because you're like, well, it's kind of hampered by the other thing I own, so it doesn't really matter. So, and by then you're almost staring down the end of the game anyway. So by the time you actually pull something amazing off, game's over and you're done.
Game's over.
And you didn't even get to run it. So there's that.
Well, you said game over, and this involves trains.
Yep.
So we mentioned that the phases start when the next train is available, right? So as soon as someone buys the last 6E, the 80s are available.
Right.
And that's the last phase of the game. The game ends if someone reaches the top of the stock market or someone goes bankrupt.
Right.
It's an unlimited bank, so that's not a factor. But the other way the game can end, and it's the way that I've seen it end, I think all 7 times, is as soon as the 8 trains are available, you'll finish that set of ORs, of course, have one final stock round, and then you'll have the last 2 ORs. And in those last 2 ORs, you can't lay track, you can't build stations. So they're very quick. All you can do is buy trains, move trains around, run trains, pay dividends. So.
What's really interesting is kind of makes me want to ask, which do you like better? Do you like games that end on a thing other than bankruptcy? And when I say bankruptcy, I mean the bank ending, not somebody. Yeah. I'm happy to end the game when there's a bankruptcy, because to me that's like somebody's not having fun anymore anyway.
Sure, yeah.
Unless they have a way to re-enter. But I think for the most part, do you like a game with the bank breaking? Because I feel like, we're always, whenever I get to the end of a game, we're kind of like, oh, well, the bank's about to break, so this is probably going to be the end.
I would prefer a game that has an unlimited bank, because we don't have to count out chips. Of course,
Yeah.
we all have our sets set up to easily do that, but like,
Some of us takes a lot longer than others. Just
is the
saying.
bank going to break? Is that going to, I just, you know what? Here's a pile of poker chips. Let's play. That's what I
And here's a game end trigger. And I think what that does is I think it allows somebody to actually push the end of the game a little bit more than, say, a bank.
like in some games, right?
Right. Like
I'm going to buy that train. Boom.
right. I don't need it, but I need to buy that train so that we can end because I'm in a good
This
position.
game buys it for you, so to speak,
Right.
right? Because as soon as it's available, boom, we're there.
Or,
Game's over.
I'm just going to keep pushing my company because if we didn't end, my company was about to go into the game close spot anyway. So it's like even if it went one more set of ORs, that was going to be
You were right
it.
there.
So it's kind of, I like it because it kind of feels like it gives the individual a little more control because, everybody's had that guy who's like, I'm going to buy a train right here in the last round just to dump another $1,000 into the bank and make us go a whole nother set. And I'm kind of like, you know what? It's a lever. You're pulling it.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I'm at the same time, I'm like, but even you're in last place. And it can be a little exhausting. So I kind of, it just came up. Like it just, I felt it in this game.
Sure.
I'm like, I kind of feel like I have a little more, skin in the game when there's that button that I'm kind of struggling to reach on the wall at the end of the game to kind of game over. I don't feel like I get to hit that one that we run bankrupt the bank.
Well, yeah. And in this game, that button kind of, if you don't push it, the game will push it. So
right, exactly.
Which is a good thing in this game.
But definitely a different feel. So I'm curious. Let me know in the comments or whatnot what you guys think is your preferred, because it's not something I think I've ever really heard discussed.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. So this has been fun. This has been mostly normal. Now let's talk about the I don't want to say insane because that's not correct, but the bizarre game wrecking
Awesome.
in the best way possible cards.
So brown face shenanigans, right?
Yep.
But before we talk about cards, let's talk about a non-card shenanigan.
A non-card shenanigan?
Because we've talked about the North Korean companies being able to produce a lot of revenue.
Yes.
Sometimes that might entice another player to maybe buy, I don't know, 2 of them.
Not if you're running the company. I don't.
So we have seen
But it's not horrible.
a shenanigan in that sense of, wow, I'm going to get in on that. I'm going to buy 2 because it's paying a lot, and then timing works out. Whether it's priority deal, which is set in pass order, right?
Right.
So you're in full control of if you're going to pass or not. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It has worked out that we have seen North Korean companies that will not be saved, or the player that was the director decided was not going to save, gifted to another player who then has to decide, well, I'll just lose my investment or I'll try to save them and stuff like that. So we have seen some North Korean companies change hands.
Not to mention the fact, like, maybe you don't care about it because it's not connected to you, but it might be on the verge of being connected for somebody else. And they're like, oh, I can connect that pretty quick, so I don't mind this thing being dumped on me.
You just never know. Hey, maybe the other thing is, sure, we can save this company, but I don't want to be down there, over there with 1 token. I'll just get my money now, let you handle it. And now that the Korean War is open and I can par a company at 200, I'm just going to plow all the money into something else and let you worry about a permanent train later.
And that's
even if it's still a good company.
And that's super important, right? Like, because you just reminded me, like, well, if you just, number one, the North does not have a lot of doinks. So you tend to run city to city to city, which is another reason your revenue is pretty high. But the fact that you might be tokening up there so that you can run all these small trains you bought so you can have multiple routes leaves you with 1 token in the South. And there are new companies coming in later in the game because after the war, we now add in
South Koreans.
3 more variable amount, because if we have 4 players.
Or 5 players, there's 4
Yeah, we're adding even more. So there's more companies coming in South. So, that 1 token, you might really have no root, and now you have to buy at least a 5e. So it's kind of one of those things like, yeah, you probably might want that North Korean company to die, because it might be more of a liability in the end to have to get a train in it, give it no run. Maybe it makes a paltry amount, doesn't move forward on the chart at all. So what's the point?
Yeah.
So, and we'll leave that for you to discover on your own, but it's fun. But I think the single biggest shenanigan is the infliction of these cards on each other.
The asset cards.
Yeah.
There's A, Bs, and Cs, and I think the A's are generally a little more powerful than the B's, which are generally a little more powerful than the C's.
Yeah, there's definitely some structure to it.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, what we thought we'd do here is we just pick a handful of, we'll just read some cards and talk out loud.
And one of my favorite ones is right on the front.
Good.
Which is hysterical. So it's available from the start, but it's a jam-packed train, and it's the higher grade train is applied when calculating revenue if the company has more than 2 E trains.
Yeah.
So that problem I was talking about, if I have a 5E and an 8E, well, actually it would count as 2 8Es. So that's kind of ridiculous.
Yes.
Right off the bat.
This one is this is an A. When your trains rust, they soft rust instead, like 1846. So you get one more run out of them. You know that what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't suck. Yeah.
Yeah. No, not at all. So there are 2 of the oceanography researchers, and this was the one I ended up getting both of them.
Yes.
And this was pretty ridiculous because this. I'm gonna unfold the map. I'm sorry for you listening at home, not seeing what I'm doing. So my city that I had was over here in Incheon. And then I had this little guy, and it's 30, 60, 80.
Which is great.
Right, in yellow, brown, and gray. Mindful, gray doesn't last very long because by then you're triggering the end of the game. So, that's a nice big number, but it's sitting out there. But what the oceanographer does is it gives you a little tile that changes that into a 30, 70, 90. And that can go anywhere that has an offboard ocean. That you just take this little guy and you cover it up. So I did that, which was great because it gave me, like the other oceanographer gave me a nice value, gave me 60 in yellow. It was 60, 50, 40. So it decreased the value. So I ran it in yellow for 60, and then I played the other one and changed it over to the one that ran for the 70, 90.
And you ate it too.
And even better than that, Incheon was a 2-station tile that leads to this, and I had both the token spots for both my
companies. Yeah.
Because anybody can use that. But I made it so only my companies could. It was a lot of fun. It totally broken.
Such a jerk. How can you look at yourself in the mirror doing that? You know?
I can because I lost by $200 lousy dollars.
This is a good one. A defector, right? Like you can build all your stations for free, but when the Korean War happens, you can just pick up all your tokens and move them south.
Nice.
I mean, it's broken.
Totally.
But it's awesome.
And I'm going to tell you right now, these cards are inspiring a lot of. We spent the morning playing with a lot of these ideas. You may see them again. So this one's fun. Train rental. Even if you don't have a train, you lease the top train from the deck and get to run it. So you just basically don't have to have a train. You can just kind of lease it.
This one's kind of normal. And there's 3 of these, one in the A, one in the B, one in the C. This is just an $80 income to your company. So it's kind of like a private company,
just money.
But it pays $80. The yellow one, the B, is $40, and the green one is $20, right? So you see how they kind of tier down. But like in our very first game, Todd got the 80 and the 40. They both happened to be available. So he was getting $120 into his company every OR. Let me tell you this: he finished second. He did not finish.
He
first.
couldn't get the money out.
So like, as crazy as some of these things are, everybody's got crazy. You still need to play well and synergize these things correctly, or you're not guaranteed to win. We thought Todd was going to win.
No. Nope. There's another one here that's a fund. Whenever shares of this company are purchased from the company, the bank gives an additional 20% into the company. At the end of the round, so there are also some things that kind of make this game line up with others. So this one is at the end, if everything is held, you float up.
Yes.
So that can be handy.
If you're sold out, you do get to go up. A lot of these place these tiles on like
that
the
one's
C
so
areas
broken.
and stuff. Yes.
So this
awful.
one, so this is the other. This is the other. So you know the two I had. This is the last one. So it adds a doink at the end into a C space, and it gives you 30, 40, 50. But it gives you a bonus of $150 or $300 to the run total.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And there's 6 or 7 of these tiles in here
Yeah.
that are controlled by these cards, right? So some games won't have any of these in them. Some might have 1 or 2.
What's that zigzaggy one? I love the fact that they kind of did this thing like
one?
Mark Hybo did, right? Like where they add tiles to the board to kind of add area.
This one's got this fits over a hex.
Yeah, it's just it's really clever, and you know what? If you got room on a punch board for it, I think it's really neat because it expands the board.
This was a fantastic idea that these guys had. See,
So-
like West Sea Cruise allows you to lay that tile.
Right. Just really good, clever stuff.
Man.
I mean, trying to even think of these is kind of crazy. I love this one. The company's shares are not included in the share limit count.
Yeah, they're yellow strategy. Boom, right?
Instant yellow strategy, but you're worth $200.
This one Matt used pretty well. It's a prototype. So like, you're able to buy a train. You're able to run a train early. So like,
Oh, right, yeah.
even though only 3 trains are available right now, well, I could buy a 4 train. It's a prototype. Now I cannot sell that train to any other company. No other company can buy that train from me until 4s are available.
Right.
And then, but I got to run a 4 train. That Matt did anyway. That kind of stuff.
Basically, if there's a rule about 18XX, there's a card here that says you can just go around that one.
Breaks it, stretches it. I mean, all kinds of stuff, right? Like that's where the shenanigans are, because like, how can I synergize my A, B, and C, right? How do I want to distribute them? When I start this company, do I want to put A, B, and C in there, or just the A? Because this one's really cool for my second
Right.
company and stuff like that. And if I see you've got this company with this really cool stuff going on, I'll buy more than one. You're not dumping that on me,
No. Yeah, dumping it unless you're in a game that's going to probably have a lot of it. It has to be situationally makes sense, right?
for sure.
And not just pulling levers. But so I think we could spend here. We could read every card to you.
Yeah, let's rock
and
on.
it would be pretty good. But let's move on into the feely gray phase, and we like to talk about what we feel about the game. And I think you can kind of tell we're kind of hot on this one. I really like it. Do I think that the train gamer in my group that really is very predeterministic and likes things very structured is going to enjoy this game? No, I don't think he is. And that's probably, that's completely fine because everybody's allowed to have that taste. But is Kelly going to eat this up and try and break it even more? Probably.
Probably. It might not be his first choice on a game day, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it needs its audience, but I think it found 2 of them right here because I love, and it's definitely like, it's not randomness because if you don't like the spread of the cards at the beginning of the game, pick the ones you like. There was one that you played with that are like, we already played with this one. I don't want to play with that. Let's play with something new.
Yeah.
And you kind of get that vibe and you just kind of, it's like having your choice of privates when you start a game is really what it boils down to.
Yeah, there's nothing random. They're the cards.
Yeah, if you want to play it completely random, have at it. Deal them. See what happens.
No.
But
And they're snake draft. So like,
yeah.
I'll pick one, you'll pick one, then Matt will pick 2, come back to you, back to me to 2. That kind of stuff. So.
And I appreciate because I think snake draft is kind of the way to go, especially when you have something that's such a large piece. Like if you're last in that row, being able to double dip so you can pair something nicely together. Yeah. But yeah, you're all going to have an A, B, and a C and rock the game and then have some fun because I think it's great.
I think that this game is fun, which makes it great.
Exactly.
because like the differences in this game, these crazy things that make it fun are appealing to me. It feels refreshing. I'm doing something different, and I'm also doing that in basically 3 hours. Right? This is a 3-hour game. Maybe not your first time, but you get it there quickly. So it's not like it's all this crazy stuff for 6 hours, right? If it is, that's a different story. That's that,
Yeah.
Right, because this is not like a serious grognard's game, but it's not far off from that. It's still a serious 18xx game with a lot more like superheroes and stuff like that, and I guess maybe
it's like somebody took 22 and said, "These are fun. What happens if we turn them up to 11?"
Yes. It gives me an opportunity. Like I like to try different things with the North Korean companies. Save it, don't save it. There's this one way up high by the Russian border that can just make bank. Well, when I start that company, I'm hoping that if that company's available in the game,
Right.
and if there's some shenanigan cards where maybe there's some cards that are like, hey, if your North Korean company closes, you can get a certain amount of money back.
Sure.
Instead of no compensation, stuff like that. I might just milk that company, just hit that company, make a lot of money, own shares, and then I'll get something back at the end. Who cares, right? I'll push trains. Even though I'll never get those trains off, I'm a buy them up and push them. Right? That kind
absolutely.
of stuff.
I will tell you, if you are going to run a high-low opening strategy with a high company and a low company, put the low company in the north. Because putting the
double jump.
Yeah, it was a little harder too to give up that share value. It just mentally hurt a little bit. But you can also sell it out a little bit before the war's about to happen. So you have a little control over how much exposure you have at that time, for sure.
Cool.
Awesome. No, I totally agree, 100%.
All right.
All right.
Priority deal.
Yeah.
I don't have any. It's past order.
And it's too new. I don't even know.
It's too new.
You know what? Bottle sriracha? Sriracha?
Is that Korean?
I don't know. I'll have to look into that.
I need something thematic.
Yeah, a little more thematic than that. But anyway, the overall vibe is we really like it. The other thing is, now we kind of have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is getting a copy. Because, it's in this day and age where we can walk onto the AAG website, or we can go to GMT and we can push buttons and buy games, which is amazing compared to where we were even 5 years ago. This one's kind of back to the old school. This is a small publisher. They ran a Kickstarter, so there are some copies floating around. As far as we know, you have to reach out to the company on Instagram. So it's Instagram, and it's Art and Piece, and it's PIEC. And you can reach out to them and ask them for information. Last I heard, you had to bank wire transfer money to them. So that might be a limiting factor for a lot of people who don't even know how banks work, like me. Like, I don't do our banking, so I don't even know if I could pull that off. So you're going to have a fee associated with that. You're going to have the money going. So
it's going to take it a bit to ship over,
Yeah, and then the last part, the other elephant that's sitting right next to the other elephant is the language barrier. This game, all the cards that come with the game are all in Korean. There's no English cards. So you need to source the language translated cards, find a way to make that happen.
Yeah. And the rules. And they're out there. I mean, but like,
they're not on BGG at the time that we looked this morning. So, hey, if you're somebody and you have those things,
they're out there. These were shared with me, but
do a solid.
I don't know what the sharing rules are.
Exactly.
I'm sure they don't care. It's probably like, yes, please buy the game, and here's the English files.
And then you just got to P&P it or something like that.
Yeah, so I just printed and laminated these.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Exactly. But the production in the box itself, it comes with full playing cards, but you could easily go to Game Crafter and make your own. I mean, if you are anything like, slightly adept at Word and stuff, you could probably make it happen. But yeah, if you have the laminator, go old school, get her done, no problem.
Old school.
Yeah, he was printing certificates this morning even.
That's right.
So that was a whole nother problem. But
for other crazy stuff we're dreaming up. And it is crazy.
Yeah, so if you can't tell, we like it. If you get a chance to play it, highly recommend it. I know I literally saw last night Bankruptcy Club was playing it again.
Like their third time or
I think so,
streaming
yeah.
it, yeah.
So, you can definitely like watch it and get a vibe for it and see how it plays. And, check that stuff out. But
YouTube Bankruptcy Club.
yeah, they're definitely friends of the show. But
They were at
most
Trax.
everybody's a friend of the show. Yeah, they were at Trax.
They were at Trax. They're good guys.
Absolutely. So there you go. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll be back when we have something else to talk about. And
Good to be with you in person.
I know, it's awesome. Now we're going to go out and eat. I'm just making them drag me to all my favorite restaurants out here.
We're going to go to the Post and have Nashville hot chicken and waffles.
Yes, it's kind of amazing. So
And
I'll let
beer.
you all, Joel. When you come out here, there's like 3 of them, and they're all amazing. So highly recommend. So thank you from Denver. Have a great one, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. This Week and Each Week is brought to you by Game Toppers. Upgrade your gaming experience at GameToppersLLC.com. Chris and Tony would love to thank all the patrons who contribute to make this show possible. Your support goes a long way to maintaining and upgrading the show on a weekly, monthly, yearly, or whatever basis. We'll see you next time.